Mojtaba has ordered a significant strengthening of Iran's defenses as a series of mystery attacks rock the country. At least 7 people have been killed in a spate of assaults along Iran's western frontier. Soldiers, rapid reaction units, and special forces have now been deployed across key stretches of Iran's borders, as officials openly hint that foreign-backed terrorists may be behind the campaign of attacks. Amid rising tensions, questions are swirling over whether Mojtaba signaled revenge by green-lighting a strike linked to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Baghdad's fortified green zone has meanwhile suffered a major security scare, fueling fears that the violence around Iran's borders could spill over into neighboring Iraq. Iran has ramped up its defensive posture along the western borders after a string of terrorist attacks, moving quickly to harden checkpoints and reinforce security units in vulnerable provinces. Tehran ordered rapid reaction units and special forces into the field after a police officer was gunned down on July 1st, describing the move as a necessary step to prevent further ambushes on its security services. The deployment was formally announced by Army Ground Force Commander Brigadier General Ali Jahan Shahi, who framed the operation as a coordinated push to stabilize the situation and reassure local communities. In recent days, a wave of attacks has targeted both security forces and civilians in Iran's border provinces, highlighting how fragile the security environment has become along these contested frontiers. State media have linked the incidents to foreign-backed terrorist groups, accusing hostile powers of trying to destabilize Iran by arming and directing insurgent networks near its borders. These flashpoints sit along Iran's western borders with Turkey and Iraq, both American allies, which feeds Tehran's suspicion that its enemies are using neighboring territory as a staging ground. On July 1st, a police officer was killed by gunmen in Sistan and Baluchestan province, in an incident that authorities say bears the hallmarks of a coordinated militant attack. Just days earlier, on June 27th, 2 law enforcement officers were killed and 5 others wounded in an armed assault in Kordestan province, further inflaming tensions in the region. Tragically, 2 civilians, including a 3-year-old girl, were injured by ricocheting bullets in the same attack, underscoring how these clashes are spilling over onto ordinary families. In a separate incident on June 29th, 2 members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps were killed and 2 more wounded in Kermanshah province, adding to the growing casualty count among Iran's security forces. At the same time, Iran's judiciary chief has called for legal and diplomatic action against the United States and Israel, accusing them of terror funding and demanding international accountability. Iranian media claim that U.S. and Israeli officials have effectively admitted to providing arms and equipment to groups operating inside Iran, citing these statements as proof of foreign involvement in the unrest. They point in particular to an April 6 remark by Donald Trump, who said that during the war, weapons were sent via Kurdish channels to groups operating along the Iran-Iraq border. Reports in Iran further allege that the U.S. smuggled thousands of Starlink terminals into the country during the December-January riots, aiming to support anti-government networks with independent communications. All of these developments came as Baghdad's heavily fortified green zone suffered a drone scare on July 1st, raising fresh alarms about cross-border escalation and the vulnerability of diplomatic targets in Iraq. Gunfire and a drone alert sparked a major security scare inside Baghdad's heavily fortified green zone, triggering a swift response. Iran's Tasnim news agency reported that gunfire was heard in Baghdad's Al-Qadra district during the early hours of July 1st, prompting an immediate security response. Some witnesses also reported seeing a drone flying over the area shortly before security personnel moved into action. The exact nature of the incident initially remained unclear as Iraqi authorities launched an investigation into what had taken place. Iraq's Security Media Office later confirmed that an unidentified drone had entered the airspace over the green zone. Security forces said the unmanned aerial vehicle was detected, tracked, and successfully shot down before it could cause any damage. The green zone is one of Iraq's most heavily protected areas, housing key government institutions as well as the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Local reports said the drone repeatedly approached the vicinity of the U.S. Embassy before it was intercepted by Iraqi security forces. Authorities have not identified who launched the drone, nor have they disclosed its intended target or motive behind the incident.